Hey everyone, Anthony Ramos here. The film Good Joe Bell is inspired by the true story of Jadin Bell, a 15-year-old boy who was bullied for being gay, who ultimately took his own life, and about his father's journey to honoring him. The film just premiered at the Toronto Film Festival, and today I'm speaking with two of the film stars, Connie, Britton, and Reid Miller. How are you both doing?
Good.
So, Reid, if I can start with you, first off, what a tremendous, incredible performance. Big round of applause for you. I think I read that you said you were destined to play this role and to tell this story. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I always felt a very, very strong connection to the material the moment I got it. And it wasn't until I actually was just talking about this because I actually wore Jaden's clothes in the film, his actual clothes that he wore. And it wasn't until my first fitting when I put on his clothes and they fit me perfectly that it hit me like a 10-ton truck that I was like, this was, without a shadow of a doubt, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to tell his story. And I always felt throughout the production that he was always there in some capacity, that he was always watching, and he was always, sort of like I've said in the past, kind of, giving us the go ahead. And like my biggest goal was to tell his story as personally and honestly as I could. And as someone who grew up in a sort of sports oriented town, who dealt with bullying, who, for me, I always wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be an actor, and they didn't understand that. And I dealt with bullying for a lot of my life. I also connected with him in that way. And again, not to compare, I mean, he honestly was tormented. I was most certainly not tormented, so I'm not going to compare. I just mean I do understand that feeling of loneliness, and that sort of bonded me to him, because no one should have to feel that way. No one should have to feel that that is their only option. And the fact that he did, I can't even begin to understand that. And it's terrible. And that's why I knew I was supposed to tell this story, because I felt like it was my duty to get this story out there, because I don't think enough people know that this even happened. So the fact that it's getting the attention that it is, and that we have Connie, who does an incredible job, Mark, who does an amazing job. I mean, the fact that we have all these amazing performances from these amazing people who genuinely cared, it's like it's finally getting the recognition it deserves.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Connie, I'm going to hop over to you. You portray Jaden's mother in this. You are a mother yourself. What was it like to, go into this story and, kind of learn about this horrific experience that happened to this poor kid?
Well, I was really fortunate to be able to speak to Lola, who is the mother of Jaden, the character that I played, and the survivor, so she was extremely forthcoming and generous with her honesty about this story, and sharing that with us and with me. And that was so valuable, because to me as an actor, being able to tell stories like this from as authentic a place as possible is so important, because we are then able to reflect these stories outward into the culture. And, as Reid was saying, there's people who don't know this story, but there are so many countless stories of particularly young LGBTQ youth who struggle with bullying and with acceptance and ultimately suicide. And you know, this is such an important issue. And so to be able to tell this story from the vantage point of the very relatable roles of being a mother, being a father, being a son, living in a family, living in a community who doesn't necessarily have understanding and education, we have a great opportunity here to reflect that story outward and to help so many people have better understanding. And you know, so for me as a mother, that is, as a mother, as a human being, and as an actress, that's what I want to be doing, period.
Well, thank you so much for taking part in this. Reid, I'm going to hop over back to you. You mentioned, you know, the similarities between you and Jaden kind of in smaller sports, you know, or not big cities, and then also going through some bullying of your own. How did you, you know, what was it like to kind of take yourself back to your own personal experiences in a way to get in the mindset of this character for this film?
You know, I think for me, I haven't really dealt with some of that stuff in quite some time, mostly because I didn't really want to. And I knew in playing Jaden and telling his story that I would need to. And it was my duty to, in order to properly tell his story. And it certainly wasn't easy. It was very hard to go to that place and to go further, even than where maybe I really was, just to feel what he felt genuinely. I didn't want anything to be fake or dishonest. I wanted to feel exactly what he felt so I could properly show that to an audience so they could see that pain. It was really hard, but I was very, very lucky and fortunate to be a part of a cast and a crew that is incredibly loving and warm, and just creates a safe environment and a safe space to be vulnerable and go to those places. You know, it's funny, me and Connie don't have a ton together, but a lot of the heavy scenes are with Connie, and I'm very glad they were, because Connie creates a very I don't even know how to word this, like just I feel like a fuzzy blanket, you know what I mean? Like it lets me, like, I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm in a safe space. I can do this, but also know that it's fine. Like there's a scene where we hug at the end of the scene, and you have no idea how much I needed that. You know what I mean? Like it was just, and it was so genuine. And I think even though we don't have a lot together, that connection is there. And I do think it plays very well. So, you know, thank you, Connie, for creating a very safe environment to allow me to even go to that place and feel like I was okay doing it.
I know. That scene was the hugging scene was something that I was going to bring up, because it was, you know, it's exactly like what I was hoping would happen between the two of you, and it was so special. Connie, I'm going to go back to you. You know, I think one of the interesting things when I was researching the story more is this happened 7 years ago. This didn't happen 25 years ago. This is recent.
Yeah.
How upsetting is it to you to know that there are kids like Jaden that this is still happening to, whether it's in school, cyberbullying, online? It's just, you know, it's very much in our recent history.
Well, I actually remember the story. I remember reading about it. And I was talking to a group of friends of mine actually just yesterday, and telling them about this movie. And I kind of prefaced it by saying, well, do you guys remember the story of this young, you know, LGBTQ kid who committed suicide? And I was going to go on, and they said, which one? Because obviously this is just such it's such an issue in our country right up until now and has been historically. And, you know, the fact that the story is 7 years ago, it's the timing of it is almost irrelevant because we continue to deal with this today, and we're dealing with it on every level of the culture and the society, whether it's politically or socially, and in the family unit. And so I really feel like we have a responsibility to tell stories like this where we're shedding light on it, on how important education and acceptance is. And it needs to happen in families, it needs to happen in communities, it needs to happen in schools, and it certainly needs to happen politically. And I feel like this story is important because we do it in such a relatable and accessible way.
100%. And, you know, it's the timing of this, you know, premiering in Toronto Film Festival with Spirit Day coming up next month, which I know that you all are familiar with. But, you know, obviously that's when, you know, everyone, the world comes together on social media to wear purple, to really take a stand to ending this LGBTQ youth bullying that happens in schools and kids, schools and, excuse me, and online. I really think that the film has the power to reach a whole new audience and to, you know, open people's eyes up to what's happening to, you know, these young kids. I want to talk about Mark Wahlberg as well. He plays Jaden's father, Joe Bell. I think it's really extraordinary and something important to talk about that we have Mark Wahlberg, who is a straight man, who is a man of faith, who's a giant movie star that wants to lend his name and spread awareness on that. Reid, what was it like for you to, you know, really share so much of this experience with him?
I wouldn't have had it any other way. I mean, it's like, you know, to come at it from a fan angle for a second. I mean, like, he's Mark Wahlberg. You know what I mean? Like, when I first met him, I went to his house. It was actually it was my first meeting with him and the director. Whew, man, when I tell you I'd never sweat more in my life, wow, that was a lot. It was a lot of sweat. I was so nervous. I was like petrified because it's like, that's Mark Wahlberg. Like, I grew up watching Mark Wahlberg. And the moment he walked into the room, I immediately relaxed because he's just a very welcoming, kind, genuine guy. And the moment I got to go into the room with him and just have a conversation, I knew this was the right fit because it was like talking to my dad. And we read together, and afterwards he walked me outside and we were talking, and it was so funny because he went, you know, it was like when we did that scene, it was like I was talking to my son, and I feel like that when I talk to you. And the fact that we felt the same way about each other, I think allowed us to connect on a much deeper level than just the material. And you know, he treated me like an equal. He guided me every step of the way. And if I ever had a panic moment, I was like, oh God, what am I doing? You know, I could just talk to him about it, and he would just kind of talk me through it. And he was just such a genuine and kind person that I hope I get to, you know, work with again someday.
Connie, I do think it's, you know, it is such a big deal for our community to have someone like Mark Wahlberg, you know, say, you know, this is not okay, the bullying has to stop. You know, what do you think that means to have, you know, someone like Mark Wahlberg supporting and, you know, really wanting to open people's eyes up to this story?
Well, I think I agree with you. It's really powerful, and I think even in particular, it's powerful because he goes about it with such genuine integrity and commitment and generosity, and which he did throughout the process of this, every day on set, in all of his research. And you know, that commitment is palpable, and it's palpable in his performance and in who he is in the world. And the other thing that I think is so important about him, but also about this performance, is that people will be able, Mark Wahlberg fans and everybody else will be able to watch somebody in real-time transformation of understanding. And I think watching the journey that he takes is going to be really, really valuable for audiences, and really valuable for Mark Wahlberg audiences.
Sure.
And it's just extremely relatable and powerful. So I'm so thrilled to just see this get out there and watch what happens.
Thank you so much. I want to wrap up with one last question. I think, when we think of how do we stop bullying, how do we get this conversation just change, the key to change is using your voice. Obviously, an election is happening. Connie, if you could just remind anyone out there who may be thinking that my vote doesn't matter, I don't need to show up to the polls in November, remind us all why voting is important and must be done.
I am spending pretty much every minute of every day shouting to the rooftops that people have to get out and vote. And it is the most important thing that we can do as human beings. It is the most important thing that we can do as Americans. If you want to live in a democracy and have it be something relative to a functioning democracy, you have to use your voice, and your voice equals your vote. So I'm just telling everybody and encouraging everybody else to tell everyone they know to make sure that they're registered and make sure they know how to vote on voting day this year, and vote for what your voice is and what your values are. So I'm a broken record about that.
Thank you for that. And Reid, am I correct? Will this be your first presidential election to vote in, or did you?
This will be my first, yes.
Right. So as a young person, for you, what's it like? I mean, remind everyone we must vote, but I mean, you gotta, young people are struggling with it. They think it doesn't matter. You're a young person. Why does voting matter?
It matters because the person who leads our country is not only a reflection of us as a people, but we need someone who genuinely cares and has empathy for every single person in our country. And that's why I think it's so important to vote. And I also think it's a very strange time. I think it's a very complicated time, and again, kind of always is. So, but I just think it's important, like Connie said, to go with your heart and go with who is going to properly share your voice, and someone who is going to have empathy, and someone who's going to genuinely care about others and not themselves, I think is incredibly important.
Well, Reid, Connie, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for talking to us, and also thanks so much for being a part of telling this important story. I really hope that everyone can get to see Good Joe Bell in theaters or on demand somewhere really, really soon. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.